his BS from Santa Clara University in California. I think it's in California, isn't it? Yeah. Master's in Teaching from the Evergreen State College and a doctorate in Education from Seattle Pacific University. He has taught at all different levels in schools, K-12, and also in alternate traditional high schools, elementary school, and served on the building and central office administration, K-12, gifted education, special education, you name it, he's like he's covered it all. And now he's been superintendent of Chimacum School. Didn't say how long. How long has it been?
Feels longer than it is. 2.5 years.
2.5 years, thanks. And Scott is a native of Washington, born in Seattle, raised in Redmond, and has 2 sons, 26 and 21, and a almost 1-year-old daughter, Greta. So look forward to hearing from Scott.
Thank you. It's really good to be out tonight. I was really excited about the crowd size. Like, wow, you're here to see me, and I thought, no, I'm the warm-up act for the Maristone store. But it's fine. I only have about 3 hours of material, so hopefully, you know, at 10 you'll be ready to hear from Maristone. It was funny you brought up Santa Clara. Santa Clara beat Gonzaga the other night. Yes, I don't think we beat Gonzaga since I went to college, and that was a long time ago, so that's kind of exciting. I apologize, I'm dressed down a little bit tonight because we're on snow watch. I'm going to be up at 4 o'clock tomorrow morning to decide whether or not we're going to go late start or close, and so that's going to be pretty fun. So we're in that mode, and I want to thank the residents of Maristone. We parked a bus here the other night. I don't know if you noticed. We dropped all the kids off, and the bus driver said, I don't think it's a good idea for me to drive any farther, so we parked it at the marina and we picked her up. So thank you for lending us a very large parking spot for our bus. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, and not because I want to toot my own horn, but I think it's really important in a community like ours that you know the superintendent, you know the person who is responsible for the public education of the kids of this district. And Maristone is in Chimacum, which is very cool. So first of all, I am a divorced father of 2. As Gary said, I have 2 sons, one 27 and one 21. Sawyer, the youngest, is in Portland, going to Lewis and Clark College, and Sage, who's a former Coast Guardsman, lives in Tennessee with his wife. In 2019, I was remarried to Maggie, and we like to think of ourselves as a bonus family. And you know the part about life where it doesn't go the way you think it will go? You remember this part, right? Divorce was not something I had in my bingo card, right? I was like, it'll be fine, and divorce happened, and it was very painful and rough. But then finding marriage again has been really wonderful, and having this bonus family has been quite exquisite. And in about 3 days after we were married, 4 days after we were married, we were here in the community. We were actually staying in Port Townsend on a little mini honeymoon. And at that time, I had just finished, I had just finished my superintendent credential. I've had my doctorate for a long time, and the superintendent credential is kind of an important step to becoming a superintendent. And since my youngest son was a senior, it was time to start looking for superintendent jobs. So I was standing in Finn River. That's a soda of some kind, I don't remember. And I was talking to Maggie, and I said, you know, I think I could live here. And at the time, we lived on Whidbey Island. I'd been there for 25 years, and you all know Whidbey, it's beautiful. Well, you see the school district behind me in the photograph there, right? So that was kind of interesting. And about 4 days later, Dr. Christina Mayer contacted me and said, hey, we have an opening in Chimacum, we'd like you to apply. Yeah, and that was something. It actually is quite something. So I'm really glad I ended up here. Serendipity, luck, hopefully a little bit of skill, and the rest. So this is my bonus family a year ago, and we were all together in Big Sky, Montana. That was the day it wasn't minus 30. And then a year ago, February, we had Greta. And Greta joined us in this world, and she's wonderful, and really, really love her. So that is, as you're probably in the audience going, what? You did what? I say, yes, I did. I did that. Well, things always get interesting. So Greta got to meet my mom for the first time last July. My mom has late-stage dementia. And on the first day we visited, my mom was having a rough day and not a lot there, and you know, we got to connect and have a good time and introduce her. And the next day we went back, my mom walked across the room, she sat down on the couch, she grabbed Greta, and she held Greta like she had just held me or my sister or any other baby, and it was astonishing. And about a minute in, she lost her nerve and she handed her back, but it was that lucid moment that I'll never forget. And it was extraordinary. It was an exquisite part of my life. And I tell you that because I need you to know that I get all of this whole life thing, right? I'm very tuned into what's happening. And it's important that leaders know that. It's important that leaders have that empathic ability to understand what it's like at all parts of life. And having this experience with my mom was really tender and wonderful and beautiful and gave me a lot to think about. We all got to finally be together, the bonus family, with Greta in August. So this is all of us. And if you'll notice, there's a little bump happening in my daughter-in-law, Rohini. And a month and a half ago, I became a grandfather.
Wow.
And I did that too. This is Alina, and she's lovely, and I haven't met her yet. I'm going to Tennessee next month to see her. But family is important. And it's important to all of us. You all gather in community here pretty regularly. This is quite something. But supporting our families, being present for our families, giving our families our best is really important to me. I want to tell you a little bit about our community. These are things that you may know. There's about 12,000 people that live in the school district. And the median age is a little higher than Washington, as you can see. And as is the poverty rate. The median home price, probably a little higher than $365 now. On Maristone and Port Ludlow, it's in the 600 range. We have a pretty well-educated population and a very high number of veterans. I had no idea. Met a veteran tonight. Thank you for your service. 100 years old, that's impressive. But we have a lot of veterans. I think this number's down a little bit, closer to 16%. I picked these off the 2020 census. And then between 2000 and 2020, the percentage of our population of school-age children, what became half of what it was. So 16% of the population to about 8. So that's a pretty substantial thing. So in our district, we're at about 690 students. That's about half of what we were in 1998. About 85% white, and about 10% or so identify as 2 or more races. About 50 to 60%, depending on how you measure poverty, is low income. And somewhere between 16 and 18% is special education. So students who have been identified as having a disability. I'm going to talk a little bit more about these two in relation to our overall population. And we've got more males than females. I have no idea why. So a lot of people ask me, so how are we doing since the pandemic? How are kids doing since COVID? Well, I will tell you that they're doing better, but it's not great. So when we think about the study of disasters, so social scientists who study disasters quite a bit, talk about the initial impact of some kind of disaster, a disease outbreak, Fukushima triple disaster, the fires in Maui, all of those things. Initial impact, and then there's a heroic response immediately. The one to watch is that one we just saw in Maui, right? We saw all of that in the news. Shortly thereafter, people's emotions plunge into disillusionment. You saw that in Maui, right? People are really pissed off about what happened, and they're really frustrated and upset and sad. It kind of bottoms out for a while, and then you start to make a comeback. When we were coming out at about 16 months from the initial COVID, we got Omicron. So in most disasters, you're starting to come out, we cratered again. Then we got the third impact, right? It was Delta, then Omicron. So we're really kind of just starting to come back to where we were. And so it's really difficult to reconcile a lot of things that happen for our kids, but we have to do our best and we have to make things work. The main things that happen really happen in the brain. So first of all, when you have some sort of capital T trauma, something major happens, and all of the upset and terribleness that was COVID, whether it's being isolated and lonely, or watching people die, or watching the news, all of those things affected our brain function. Function, planning and organization, and impulse. So a lot of the things that you see in schools are around those two things, right? Children with challenges with impulse, and children and young people with challenges with planning. They aren't unmotivated. We're just struggling to get past these initial things. So our enrollment, as I said, since 2012, I'm sorry this is so small, went from about 1,200 to last year we were around 700. If you'll see these two lines here, this line is the percentage of students that are low income, and this is the percentage of students that are special ed. Where are special ed? I guess I didn't put special ed on here. This is low income, okay? Then there's a parallel line for special ed. As our enrollment dropped, the students who identified or were identified as low income stayed high, as did students in special education. So we saw a shift in our student demographic, where a lot of students who were well off financially or were not special education were going to other districts. That was on us, right? Rita and I had this conversation, okay? But nonetheless, you got to dance with them what brung you, and this is our work, and it's very important work. So poverty is also a challenge for how children's brains develop. And so when you get an intersection between poverty and the kind of stress of COVID, you've got kids with a double whammy. So think of it about a storm, like the one we had recently, and think about it this way. Everybody has a different boat. We have kids that are out in the storm in a canoe or a raft, and we have kids that are in battleships, right? Or frigates, or tugboats, right? Things that can steady that storm. Imagine the terror and frustration you are feeling if you are in a storm in a boat that could go underwater at any moment. That's what it's like to be a child that's experienced post-pandemic and poverty. And maybe you stack on top of that a learning disability or abuse, or they move around a lot. Right? That's a snapshot of a lot of the things our kids are going through. So same storm, different boats. So I think a lot about how to improve, and I could show you a lot of data because I kind of swim around in it. I'm kind of a data geek. That's why they gave me the doctor title. But I would tell you that the most important data point right now for me is attendance. I want children to come to school and they were more likely to learn. So this is what's happened. This is the spike of chronic attendance problems. So chronic attendance is 10% or more absences in any given amount of time. We're pushing down that trend. This is pretty cool. This is like the applause line, right, for our community. Because that means that our students are getting to school more, and our attendance has improved by at least 5%, and our chronic attendance rates are down. So you got all these problems, Scott. Like, you've got all these challenges. You've got years of falling enrollment due to leadership challenges and demographic changes and mismanagement and all of those things. What are you going to do? Well, I go full Ted Lasso, right? You have to start with the belief that you can make a difference. And there are days where I don't want to get out of bed, and there are days where I want to give up, right? I am a human being, and these are challenging times. But we have decided that we have a very strong purpose in our district to be a caring community for courageous learners. This is our why. There is no other why. That is the one. Our promise, this is the aspiration we have for our community, is all students known by name, strength, and need. so they can learn, dream, and become. We think that being small is our asset. Just because we can't offer the same things that can be offered in a big high school or a big elementary school or a big school district doesn't mean we can't be really, really good at knowing kids. And as you know, we have kids that are in our system for all 13 years. And now with preschool, 14 years, which is pretty fun. So what this translates into, and I'm not going to go into depth on this because it's really boring actually, but it's the strategic plan. But there are things about our strategic plan that are not boring, and that is the 5 pillars of it, which are collaboration, relationships, wellness, instructional quality, and inclusion and belonging. These are the things that the lenses through which we look at our decision making, whether it's budgeting, curriculum adoption, instructional strategies, professional development, all have this lens applied to it. I wanted to show you kindergarten readiness as another data point. This is pandemic era readiness coming in. So students who are 5 years old, as they are evaluated in terms of their social emotional capacity, their physical capacity, some of their intellectual development. So that number was going up before COVID, and it plunged last year. So the students who were coming into us were not ready to be in kindergarten. And I will tell you, if you have ever you visited a kindergarten last year, you might have thought you went to the moon. Like, it was not like anything you've ever seen in your life. I had kindergarten teachers say, I have no idea how to deal with this. These are seasoned people who are like at a loss. So there's a lot of work that went into it. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about one of our responses. So just really briefly, to give you a snapshot of our fiscal situation, fiscal stuff, just so people want to know, like we have about a $17 million budget every year. We manage 230,000 square feet. We have, usually we have about $1.8 million in the bank. It's gone down to about $1 million. That's largely because of the push of federal dollars that came into the system that is now starting to wane. We have $1.325 million a year in capital projects. That all comes from local levy dollars. We got, in 3 years from the federal government, about $1.5 million, not including FEMA dollars that went for like masks and hand sanitizer, in COVID response dollars. We received a third of what Port Townsend received because even though they're only about 40% bigger, and it was because they used the 2010 metric to decide what that would be. I throw that out there because I think it's really important for people to interrogate the idea that somehow Port Townsend and Chimicum should do what Port Townsend does or vice versa, because there are two situations, and fiscal situation is one way they are different. We are about $500,000 a year in arrears on special education. So our revenue is $500,000 less than what we spent. I think I am correct, so it's not just what I think. Special education is a right, and I think it should be paid for by the state and the federal government because it's codified in law, it's mandated by law, but they don't cover it. They just don't. So it's a sad thing, but we figured it out because it's the right thing to do for kids. We also are about $1 million in arrears on operating expenses. That's just maintaining grounds, putting the lights on, heating the buildings, insuring ourselves. Our insurance costs went up 20% this year and 40% the year before. So we spent about $250,000 a year in insurance. That money is not given to us by the state. It's probably only about $50,000 for that. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about capital projects levy that's coming up. I've got some information on the table there if you want more. But we are having a capital projects levy February 13th. Capital projects funds are an ongoing source for projects and maintenance, and they have funded the new library. If you've gotten a chance to see that at the high school, funds new roofs, it funds HVAC systems, efficiencies, that kind of thing. The amount that we're asking for is not everything that's needed for identified needs. We have about $55 million in identified needs for the whole district for the next 10 or so years, and about $22 million in the immediate. and we're collecting about 9.3 in the next 4 years. But the idea is to, we're projecting that we can balance between all of the things we have to do and the things we have to do to keep ourselves operational, become more efficient, that kind of thing. So updated technology, systems, improved instructional spaces. We believe that continuous improvements to our facilities reduce the risk to our general fund. An example, about 3 months ago, our fire suppression system in the high school failed. How do you pay for that? Well, we have capital projects funds that pay for that. So we don't have to spend money that would have been gone to curriculum or teachers. It comes out of capital projects. It's fabulous fun. We just had a power outage last night. I don't know if you heard. That one's gonna hurt. We might do an insurance claim, but there were a lot of people. There was a lot of hardware. I'm a little worried about the cost of that one. The 4-year levy aligns with our next, what was used to be called an M&O levy, and it also aligns with all 4 districts in East Jefferson by 2028. So you will see Quilcene, Brennan, Port Townsend, and Chimicum, same levy schedule starting in 2028. So again, thinking about why we do this is we want to protect the general fund from ongoing maintenance and operations costs, but also things that come up like fire suppression systems failing, right? So that's helpful. Just an example of one of our projects. I don't know, again, if you've been to the high school library, this was the before, this was the after. It's a really, really beautiful space. I was just talking to a volunteer today, and we were just talking about how the kids really light up when they're there, and you talk about that attendance graph, the relationship between motivation, wanting to go to school, and a space like that is high, right? I mean, that makes intuitive sense, and we see it in action. So a couple great things happening in Chimicum. I told you a little bit about where we were with kindergarten readiness. We've taken matters into our own hands, and we're on year 2 of transition to kindergarten, which is a program, full-time program for 4-year-olds to prepare them to go to kindergarten. We've also made preschool free for 3- and 4-year-olds, and so we now have about 50 children in between those 2 programs. That's kind of like rebuilding that's like the farm team, right? Like we're trying to rebuild the bullpen or the farm team, or however, whatever sports analogy you want to use. We can make a Huskies analogy if you want. But early learning is a place we've planted our flag, and we have solicited donations to help with that, and we've used funds from the state of Washington. But we think that the tail of not helping students be ready for kindergarten is a 12-year-long one, that we are still trying to help, especially boys, feel successful by the time they graduate, or that they do graduate. We're one of only a handful of districts in our area that have student board directors. There are students who are appointed to be on the board as advisory members of the board. The 2 boys are seniors, and we'll be replacing them at the end of this year. But that's a pretty neat thing. That is a trend statewide. You'll be gratified to know, I think it's something like 80 districts now in the state of Washington of the 295 now have student board directors. We have Wellness Wednesdays, which on early release days on Wednesdays, where the buses leave an hour early, 1 day a month, we do embedded in the workday for staff wellness activities. In the past, we've brought in practitioners like nutritionists and massage and things like that, but we ran out of grant funding to do that, so now it's very self-organized. So they do ukulele and bike rides and walks, but it's saying to people, it's like, you're important to us, your wellness matters. We're not just going to say that over and over and over again and not back it up, so we are backing it up with Wellness Wednesdays for staff. Our PTA was reconstituted about 2 years ago, and it was pretty much dead and gone, and they're just amazing. You may have heard of them and what they're up to, just doing cool stuff. They just did a gig out at Maristone Winery, which is my country club, by the way. What can I say? We also, a lot of people say, you need to bring back shop. It's like, well, we have shop. So we have a construction trades program that leads kids into building tiny houses. So they're constructing their first tiny house right now that'll go into the pool locally to try and sort of chip away at the housing crisis that we have. We also have a culinary arts program and just recently opened the first food truck program for students, run by students in the state of Washington. It's an applause line. Come on. So we're feeling pretty good about not just trying to provide post-secondary options for students that are college, but that are career and other things that are going to make them happy. And you know what? Not everybody's happy going to college. I have one of those. He hated college. Community partnerships are really important to us. Our partnerships in the community, it's actually codified in board policy. So the relationships we have with Friends of Chimicum Schools or the Rotary Club or AAUW, all of those partnerships, we're trying to cultivate and make the most out of them in service of our students. We've done a lot of safety and security upgrades, new fencing, safety vestibules in the buildings, lots of things like that, trying to make those capital dollars actually stretch out into safety. And we have a much safer campus since I arrived a couple years ago. We have a communications plan in place. Hopefully you have noticed, even if you don't have children or grandchildren in school, you hopefully have noticed that our communication's better, that you're getting a flyer with some frequency, and that things are on Facebook. That's that social media thing. You guys know that? And then, as I said, the capital levy's coming up. So, happy to answer your questions. This is ways to get involved. Just grab my card and email me or go to our website, and I've gone, I guess I haven't gone that badly, have I? Did okay?
You're right.
So please, questions? Rita, you don't want
Questions for Dr. Mauk?
You're not going to do it.
Are you ready for it?
I can ask it for you, but yes, do it.
Okay. So how are you supporting the highly gifted, highly capable students who, if they're not supported, become our biggest problem troublemakers?
So can I tell a story about Rita? So my first month on the job, Rita came in pretty hot with this question. So I had no idea what I was doing. So now I do. So a couple things. So we actually are just about to pass a new board policy on highly capable learners, which mandates a couple things. One thing is that you use multiple measures to determine whether or not students are highly capable, so gifted. The other thing is that you test twice all students in a particular grade level. It's called universal screening. So we'll test second graders, and again, we'll start testing sixth graders soon. So that's just identifying students is really important. We have all free college and high school and AP courses, and we allow students to take the PSAT for free. So those are some things we're doing. We're trying to provide more enrichment activities for students at the elementary level, but we're a little ways out. And then, of course, we think the feed truck and the construction trades are also places for them to go. So really just trying to diversify the options. Thank you for the question.
We have another question here.
Is the district working with Housing Solutions Network or Habitat to, I mean, if we've lost 50% of our students and our housing prices are going through the roof, I mean, I know you're in the world of education, but without students to educate.
Yeah. And my more immediate need is actually staff. Right? People can't afford to live here. I have a staff member that's resigning at the end of the month because she can't afford to live here. So it's both things are true. Working really closely with Habitat for Humanity and Jefferson Library about the whole Mason Street project. So we're talking about how that can be one community campus. Thinking about developing that big field that's between our school and the library as maybe a common play field. I've talked a lot with Housing Solutions and trying to figure out stuff with them. We've even floated the idea of building a couple of the Habitat houses ourselves. It requires 2 votes. One that we become landlords, and then another that we could actually get a levy to fund them. So that may be not quite the right thing. But yeah, all of those things are happening. I'm very concerned about housing. I have staff that live in at least 4 counties, maybe 5. I think the other day I figured out it was Mason and Pierce, in addition to the usual suspects. Yeah. Maybe King, I guess, too, because Bainbridge is in King, isn't it? Man, is Bainbridge still in Kitsap? It's not in King? Oh, they just got to keep their 206, didn't they? Whatever. Oh, yeah. Anything else?
Any other questions? Okay, so just real quick comment. This is from me. Thank you for the presentation, Dr. Mauk. As you know, my brother Jerry sitting in the back room there, he's a former Islander. My wife Cynthia is sitting right here. You may be the only people in the room here that graduated from Chimacum High School. Anybody else?
I did.
Oh, we got one over here. Okay. So, but I think the important message I just want to leave you is that when our kids were going to school, this has been 20-some plus years ago, and they benefited from all the people who lived on Mariston Island who supported the Chimacum School with all the, whenever they had a levy and things like that. I want to make sure that even though our kids are not in school, we will continue to support Chimacum School because it's really important for this community. So I just want to make sure that the message is strong on that.
And I think that if any of you live in a prominent location, I might have an informational sign in the back of my car which you could display to present your perspective.
Okay, thank you.